How to take back control of your own life. Now, there's secrets to mastering your psychology so that you don't feel like you're battling yourself every single day. I'm Australia's best hypnotist, and I know for a fact that you don't need to be living with this internal struggle that's absolutely exhausting you. Not feeling like your best self, feeling like there's a fight going on in your own brain, and hating the thoughts that you repeatedly have is not something that you have to continue to live with. And you're not broken, but there's 3 secrets I'm here to tell you today so that you don't have to put up with this anymore. Now, I'm someone who got into this because of how much I struggled with battling myself, because of how much pain my own brain was giving me. So the only reason I know this is true is because I've been through it myself. And the first secret that I'll get into is changing the hard way versus changing the way that you're supposed to change, because I want you to realize that it's actually easier for you to be happy and successful. It's easier for you to be at home in your own brain than it is for you to be fighting your own brain all the time. And just because it has been so long since you felt at home in your own brain does not mean that it is impossible for you to get back to this state, get back to some sense of normality and peace and enjoyment in your life again. Now, how do I know that? It's because I've seen hundreds of clients who are all battling this issue. I'm sure you're battling this feeling of being out of control, of having negative thoughts, negative situations, negative feelings that you just can't control. And I know they feel so real. I know they feel so precise and overwhelming and insurmountable. But believe me, that is because your brain is wired that way right now. And the thing is, the brain cannot go against its own wiring. So while the brain has been programmed to have the belief that this pain is the way that things should be, of course it seems like nothing else is possible, because otherwise your brain would be countering itself. Your brain would be proving itself to be wrong, which it will not do, because whatever it believes has to be true. So first things first is realizing that you do not have to live with this for the rest of your life. You are not broken, and maybe you can't see a way out, but it's only because you have this problem that you can't see a way out of it already. So if you're thinking to yourself, I don't know if I'm actually going to get any better, well, all that you're saying is, I have a problem. We already knew that. Don't let the fact, we already know this fact that you have a problem. Don't let that fact make you think it's a permanent fact, because of course that's what it'll appear like when you're in the midst of the struggle. It's not until afterwards, it's not until hindsight, when you've made it out the other side, that's when of course you can look back on it and say, oh yeah, all right, of course I was going to get out of that. It wasn't as bad as it seemed, but while you're in it, of course it's going to feel terrible. Of course it's going to feel inescapable. Now, the easy way versus the hard way of getting out of this, right? Because I've seen smoking addicts, meth addicts, and I want to get into addiction a little bit more, because you're addicted to this problem right now. And that might seem jarring, it might seem untrue, but I'm pretty sure once you hear this, you'll understand why I say it. Because the definition of addiction is anything which we repeatedly do, even though it brings about results we do not desire. So these problems, or this lack of anything that you have in your life, your brain is currently addicted to being stuck in this state. Your brain is currently addicted to having your life look exactly like this. It's doing this on autopilot, even if you do not want it to be. You're bringing results into your life that you do not want, but you're continuing to do that, so therefore you are addicted. Now, how do we break? How do we snap out of an addiction? Well, the hard way is to fight ourselves, to force ourselves, to work with willpower, to guilt ourselves every single day, to have these thoughts, have these feelings, have these actions pop up, and then beat ourselves up about it, give ourselves shit, tell ourselves we're not good enough over and over again. But I call that the hard way because for 9 out of 10 people, that hasn't really got you very far. And it's kind of just made you feel terrible the whole time. And it's made you feel really bad about yourself while doing it. You didn't achieve much and you just felt terrible while not achieving that much at all. And so what I found was when I was insecure, when I was convinced that I wasn't attractive or that making money was going to be too difficult for me, or I had a porn addiction back in the day, when I was trying the hard way, when I was beating myself up over and over and over again, I didn't make any progress and I just felt worse and worse. And you can change. I'm not telling you that you can't change the hard way. Over many years, near the end of my high school and moving into my first 2-3 years as a personal trainer, I worked really hard and I had some slightly better people around me. I got into slightly better situations where I started to have slightly better examples that remolded my subconscious in this long, hard grind. But I know that that's not the way, because going through that got me into the position where I could look back on what I'd done, and I had learned enough already to see what had changed for me. And I realized the change was at the subconscious level. You see, secret number 2 is the fact that what you've got going on in your brain, that part that you actively think with, the conscious mind, it's useless. It's not your friend. It's neutral, but because it's neutral, because it's just the pawn of your subconscious programming, it's often actually your enemy. Because these thoughts that you think that feel so real, they're just your autopilot firing. It's not you making new choices, it's you acting upon the brain that your information has already had your whole life. So let me explain what that means. You see, there's a couple different types of brainwaves that we have. And the most dominant brainwave while we're up and active going about our day is something called beta brainwaves. Now, these beta brainwaves, they're actually just programs or loops firing. They're pre-established routes in your brain going on. So you have this pre-established route for brushing your teeth, because otherwise every time you went to brush your teeth, you'd have to be learning and you'd be poking yourself in the mouth over and over and over again. So 90% of what we do, over 90%, close to 99% of what we do on a daily basis is just firing a beta pattern. We have a beta pattern for interacting with others, with relationships, with alcohol, with money, with our friends, with our family, with driving, with going to school, going to the gym, everything. We have that loop on autopilot, and these loops have parameters. They have set limits, they have set expectations. So you might have a loop that tells us, or tells your brain, here's what I expect to be good, how good I expect it to be, when I expect it to be good, and here's what I expect to be bad, how bad, and when that'll happen. And what you have to realize is, earlier when I said your brain can't counteract its own programming, if your brain has a belief about how good or bad your life is going to be, or what you do or do not have to think about, then you are going to do that exact thing, because the brain, those beta patterns, those beta loops, cannot be anything other than what they have already been programmed to be. So what you believe in your mind right now, those thoughts that you're having, even listening to this, thinking, how am I going to change anything? How are things just going to get better by me thinking about them? How am I going to think differently? That thought in your head right now is a loop that is firing based on what you have experienced in your life so far. And so the hard way, the slow way, is changing things through these experiences. Well, through life experiences, through feeling one way and having to counter that over and over again, having to look at your patterns, look at how ugly they are, how they're getting you nowhere, and hate them enough that eventually, gradually they change. But instead, what hypnosis is used for is going into what we call theta brainwaves. Now, theta, this is the subconscious mind, and this is the coder of your brain. So you've got those loops, right? Up, down, left, right, brushing my teeth. I do XYZ input, and that gives me XYZ output. And theta is the inputs. It's where you manually code what's going into your brain and therefore what's being acted on in a day-to-day basis. And so what we go into and do in hypnosis is we change these beta loops. So the same way it feels so natural, it feels so automatic for you to go and do the negative things which you're doing right now, and it feels like you're kind of stuck and you're kind of just like, oh, this is all I'm worth, this is all life's ever been, this is all life's ever gonna be. Well, that's just a loop that's been coded into your brain, and when you wake up each morning, the brain just presses play. So the third secret is, what do you want to actually press play on? What do you want to be living out in your life? If you could write the code for your life, what does that actually look like? Now, getting that into your subconscious mind is the key. Getting that in there through theta is the key. And the more clarity you have on this, the sooner and the more rapidly it comes. Now, there's many methods. The best way is with a hypnosis session. You can also do self-hypnosis at home. DM me the word dominate on Instagram and I'll send you a self-hypnosis that suits your situation. And auto-suggestion, or the hard way of repeatedly battling yourself, are other ways to get this into your theta, into your brain, into your subconscious. So you have to realize that the conscious mind is useless. You have to realize that you don't want to be fighting yourself all the time. And when you do things the hard way, you're never gonna get anywhere. But once you code the right settings into your brain, you'll be way better off, way quicker, automatically.